Hello everyone, today I'm going to be showing you a quick video about how to look at your own logs and analyze them to improve your HPS as a disciplined priest. I get a lot of messages that have people asking me, hey, can you look at my logs? Hey, I'm not happy with my rank. Hey, I think my parse is low. Can you help me increase my HPS? So this video will show you what I look at in logs specifically that I tell people will give them higher throughput healing, as well as what I'm looking at in my own logs to try and make sure that I can maximize my own output. So before I do that and get into the logs part, I just want to talk real quickly about things that are outside of your control that are going to affect your ranking or your parse. And one of those things is the number of healers that you're using. There are some guilds that are 2 healing things and some guilds that are 3 healing things that are normally 4 or 5 healed. So if you're using 2 or 3 healers instead of 4 or 5, those healers will have a larger portion of the healing pie that they can heal from. So naturally they're going to be healing more than someone who's 4 or 5 healing. Another thing along that same line is kill times. If you have a shorter kill time, the boss is going to be going through his abilities more quickly, so you're going to be taking more damage per second, which means that there's more healing per second to be done. So those two things you can't really control. You can't control how many healers you're healing with or how high your DPS are pulling their numbers. One thing that you can control, however, is your gear optimization. So a lot of people are still using a spirit enchant, and that's fine if you need mana, but if you really want higher throughput, higher HPS, you will use a mastery enchant. Same thing with the spirit on your gear. If you want higher throughput, gear yourself for higher throughput. Drop the spirit from your neck and get a crit mastery neck. Drop the spirit from your back and your rings and get better throughput. Now having said that, you need to make sure that you don't yourself, because if you have 0 mana, you won't be doing any healing. If you drop literally every single spirit piece that you have, you probably won't make it to the end of the boss fight. So you need to find that balance in your healing style for how much spirit you need versus how much throughput you can afford to drop spirit for. Another thing along those same lines, throughput versus mana, is your potions. You should be using an Intellect Potion on the pre-pull. That should be your pre-pot 100% of the time. Blizzard lets you do that for free, so you should go ahead and just take that 1000 extra intellect. Min-maxing like that is something that healers that parse the highest will do because it's free. So make sure you get your intellect pre-pot. You can also use a second intellect potion during the fight if your mana allows it. If you manage to line up your power infusion with your second potion and say you have a haste or something going, that's going to be a boatload of healing that you're doing. But remember, at the same time, you don't want to yourself. There have been rank 1 parses that I've seen, that I've gotten myself, that other people have gotten, where they do use a mana pot, and they have to do that. So don't always use the second intellect potion, especially if you're going to So let's get into the logs themselves here. The first thing that I'll be looking at when I go into people's logs and when I look at my own logs are buff uptimes. One of the most important ones is borrowed time. It's going to be a good indicator for you for how well you're using your power word shield. Borrowed time lasts 6 seconds, so it will tell you any gaps you have in borrowed time. That means you didn't cast a power word shield for an entire 6 seconds. And that's quite a long time. So there will be a gap when you use a channeled mana potion, but other than that, you want to keep that buff up as close to 100% uptime as possible. Realistically, between 90 and 100 is going to be okay, especially if you're doing things like handling mechanics that call for a little trickery in your rotation that you won't be casting Power Word Shield for. But really, 90 to 100% borrowed time is what you need to be getting. Reparation is the next buff that I look at. It's the tier 18 2-piece, and it increases your penance. So let's go into game here and look at my penance. It does 100k healing over the duration. Now this buff right here is my reparation buff, and it's stacking up right now. And when it gets to 6 stacks, that 100k over the duration is now 173k over the duration. So just by keeping this buff active, I'll be gaining 73k raw healing every time I cast a penance, and that's before Divine Aegis too. So I get extra from that anytime it crits. And this buff can be kept up 100% of the time. You can stack it up before the pull and you can never let it drop, including when you use your channeled mana potion. You'll notice this player here had 99.7% uptime on their reparation, so they had very nearly 100%. They used a channeled mana potion and they managed to keep that buff active for the duration of the potion as well. So that's really good. Your reparation is one of those things that hard stance should be 100%. No excuses on that. This 99.75% is because it did fall off momentarily. I looked at his lugs closely and his reparation buff fell off for just a split second, but during that split second he lost 72% healing on his penance. So if you want to rank higher, make sure you keep those buffs high. And the third buff uptime that I look at is the #1 single most important buff that a disciplined priest has, and that is your Archangel buff. Let's pull up the calculator here real quick. Archangel has an 18-second uptime and it has a 30-second rotation, so 60% is the maximum possible uptime that you can have on Archangel. Now, unlike Reparation, Archangel is not a hard 60%. Archangel is going to range anywhere from 55 to 60%. That's a solid rotation. You will want to use your Archangels at the opportune times, but on rotation, so if you need to hold it for a second or two, that's okay. So that's where the 55% leeway comes in. And you'll see we're both 56%, 55%. We're both on the lower end of the spectrum, and as closer to 60% as you can have it, obviously the better that's going to be for you. When you hear the word rotation being used, being thrown around, this is what disciplined priests use, base their rotation around. It's this Archangel buff. So this really is the #1 most important buff that you need to be looking at. When players send me logs and their healing is pretty bad, this is the thing that makes their healing bad, is that their Archangel uptime is like 17%. Stuff as low as like, I've seen 0% Archangels. They just didn't know it existed before. So you really need to be aiming for 55 to 60% Archangel uptime. The third thing that I'm going to be looking at is not really buff uptimes, but it's buff stacking, or how you stack your buffs together. As a disciplined priest, you want to line up your power infusion with your Archangel. So power infusion lasts 20 seconds and Archangel lasts 18 seconds. So every time you power infusion, you need to be having Archangel right afterwards. You have 2 seconds of leeway before you mismanaged your cooldowns there. So power infusion, then Archangel every time. Watch how they line up here. Power infusion, Archangel, power infusion, Archangel, line up perfectly. Over here on my logs too. Power infusion, Archangel, lining up perfectly every time. Every time you see a power infusion, you see an Archangel along with it. And another one of those things with along the same lines with buff stacking is your Intellect Potions. I mentioned earlier, if you can use a second Intellect pot with your power infusion later into the fight, that's going to be really, really high HPS for you. So here you see I used a pre-pot Intellect Potion and I stacked it with my power infusion. This player here did not do that. So they missed out on quite a bit of healing in the first 25 seconds that I managed to get, so my rank will therefore be higher than his. If you want to rank higher and have higher HPS, you need to be using that pre-pot every single time. So that's really it for all the buffs. There aren't very many other buffs that Disc has, but the ones that we do have are very important that you line up correctly. So make sure you get those buffs down. And the next thing we're going to be looking at is spell usage. Did you place your spells correctly? The first one that we're going to be looking at is Penance. Offensive versus defensive Penance. Did you offensive Penance? Yes, this player did. They offensively penanced for 11 casts, 11 ticks, and they had a total of 252k damage done from Penance. So let's go back here in game. And, oops, didn't mean to stack that up. Penance baseline is 30 damage and 100k healing. So if you're only doing 30k damage, you're only doing 30% of your maximum throughput. For 11 ticks for 252k healing, that's only 30% of what he could have done if it was a defensive penance. So if you're ever in doubt, just penance your tanks. They're the ones bound to be taking damage, so you'll get good healing off your tanks from friendly penance right there. The next thing that I look at for spell usage is your Tr90 Talent. Now this particular log used Halo, which is good. Everyone should be using Halo. Cascade is just not very good. Oftentimes I'll get logs that people are using Cascade, and even when I was using Cascade at the beginning of the tier, you get numbers. These are actual numbers. I just did a log. I looked at a log with someone with these numbers. 10 Cascade casts, 900k total healing from Cascade. That means that each one Cascade did 90k healing. Now if you're going to make me cast Cascade for 90k healing, I'd rather just pump out 2 power word shields that, we'll look in here real quick. Power word shield baseline, 75,000 for me. So 75,000, 2 of those at 150,000. Yeah, I'd take 150,000 and power word shields over 90,000 in one Cascade. Cascade is just not very strong. Also, another thing that Cascade has against it is that it heals pets for I think it was something like 85 of those Cascade hits that log had, that guy. His Cascade was healing pets, so 85 times it was just totally worthless for him. So the Tr90 talent that you should be taking is Halo. On this fight is Mythic Council, so it's not a very good fight for Halo because you're stacked up the whole time. But on fights like that, if you can afford to run out and Halo a stacked group, it does huge healing. I managed to do it one time on this council fight, and it had 292k total healing. And look at all these crits. This is huge. This is one Halo. That is pretty dang massive. My one Halo cast did so much compared to what a Cascade would have done. So bottom line there, spec Halo over Cascade. If you don't have a good place to be using Halo, just using Power Word Shield in place of Cascade is better as well. And that running out tactic is especially useful for Gorefiend Feast phase. If you run out and soak your debuff on Mythic, before you run back into the pile, cast a Halo, and it will hit your entire stack group for big healing. Alright, so the last spell that I'm going to be looking at for spell placement is Prayer of Healing under the Empowered Archangel buff. So this player had 10 casts of Prayer of Healing, and we'll go into their buffs here, and they had 16 Empowered Angel buffs, so they actually wasted 6 guaranteed crits on their Prayer of Healing. They only did 10 Prayer of Healings, and they had 16 Empowered Archangels. So he's missing 5 people per group and 6 casts. He's missing 30 targets total that didn't get a crit Prayer of Healing cast on them. The number between your Empowered Archangels and your Prayer of Healing casts should be even. It should have been 16 Empowered Archangels, 16 Prayer of Healing casts. Another thing on that same note with Empowered Archangel, I'm going to show you real quickly here. Let me build some penance stacks. You want to use your Archangel within the first 18 seconds. If we wait, so we're going to get rid of this buff here, we're going to use our Archangel, we're going to wait to use our Prayer of Healing. We're going to wait to use this stack right here. You'll notice that it's going to do less healing because it doesn't get this 25% increase from the Archangel buff itself. So now that our 25% healing increase is gone, we're going to use our Empowered Archangel, and we're going to see it hit for 30k with a 45k absorb. So we're going to get back our Archangel here and cast it within the 25% increased healing, and we're going to see that that 30k now turns into 37k, and that oh well, add it together, but the Aegis would have been something higher, like 50, 60k. So if you use every single Empowered Archangel, you can even use them better by using them right away. And that's really all I have for you. Those are the 6 things that I look at, the 3 buff up times and the 3 spell placements when I go through and look at people's logs. So once again, just to recap very quickly, kill times and the number of healers that you're using you can't really control, but you can control your gear throughput and whether or not you're pre-potting, as well as your enchants and your spirit optimization. When you look at logs, you want to look at your buff uptime, specifically borrowed time, reparation, and Archangel. Please, 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 Archangel, get used to the idea of a rotation based around Archangel. When you do get a power infusion, make sure you stack it correctly using the Archangel rotation. Stack these buffs up. Stack them with heroism. Stack them with lust. Stack them with your second int pot. Stack them up, and you'll see higher HPS, higher throughput. Make sure you place your spells correctly. Don't penance the boss. Penance the tank instead. Make sure you're spec'd into Halo, not Cascade. Use your empowered Archangel. Use it early for 25% increased prayer of healing. If you do all of these things a little bit better from week to week, you can track your own progress with your own logs, and I guarantee you'll see your HPS increase. That's all for me for now, guys. Make sure to follow me here on YouTube, on Twitter and Twitch, which are linked below, and come talk to me on Twitch when I live stream, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have there. So once again, thanks guys, and good luck in Hellfire Citadel.